Hello and welcome to this masterclass by EverCoach. Today we are discussing how you can coach anybody, even if you have had no experience or you've had a lot of experience and currently you find yourself not really motivated by the techniques and hacks and rules of coaching, and you're really looking for elevating your game and elevating your results that you're able to create with your clients. This masterclass is perfect for you. Now, I don't really know how you found this class, but if you're here, you're somebody who wants to create an impact in the world. You're somebody who is looking to create a greater coaching experience for their clients. You're somebody who is hoping to elevate their coaching ability every single day. I acknowledge you for that, and I invite you to watch this masterclass with an open mind. What we're discussing today is fairly advanced, but at the same point of time, it is structured in a way that you, irrespective of your experience in coaching, will be able to capture maximum out of this experience. Once this class is done, you will find yourself being more present, you will see a transformation within yourself, and you'll see a transformation in how you show up for your clients. You'll be able to walk confidently into a coaching conversation and know and have the knowing that you are able to create an impact with your client irrespective of their experience, irrespective if you feel on paper they are more successful than you, irrespective if you have never coached them before. So today you're in for a treat because we are showing you how you could use what is known as the 3 principles and actually see an actual implementation of these 3 principles in a coaching context, and being able to work with clients irrespective of their journey and be able to take them to new places where they really want to go. While you're on this class, while you're learning how you can create that transformation for your clients, notice how you will start to change, how these 3 principles are going to start to shift you from where you are to where you want to go. It's a very interesting class and a subset of everything that we teach in our full program called Impacting Leaders. More on that later. Let me first introduce you to my guest today. My guest today is Michael Neill. Michael Neill has been coaching for the past 25 years. He's worked with authors, speakers, celebrities, entrepreneurs, executives, leaders, companies, so on and so forth. He has been able to create that impact across many continents and many destinations. He's recognized as one of the senior leaders across the coaching industry. He's somebody who has helped the coaching industry elevate for the past several years. And today, it's a pleasure to have him as the guest. Michael is also who has written multiple best-selling books, including The Inside Out Revolution and Super Coach. He's somebody who gave one TEDx talk that has had over 1 million views. Michael's books have been translated to over 17 languages. He has personally trained thousands of coaches who now credit Michael for their success and their achievements in being able to create impact in their clients' lives. Not only has Michael created that impact with coaches and being called Coach's Coach, but he has been somebody who has created transformative impact in his client's life. Let me read to you some of the case studies of clients that have worked with Michael and have been exposed to the idea of 3 principles in the way Michael teaches it to have this level of impact in their lives. This is what Ward Johnson, former owner and CEO of Sojos, said. I came away from our coaching with a sense of peace and well-being about my situation. I was able to put things in perspective and see how I was creating the narrative that made me feel like the stakes were so high. I suddenly saw that it didn't matter whether or not I sold my company. Either scenario could be fulfilling if I brought my best self to work every day. Whereas I had previously seen nothing but stress and agonizing decisions to be made, I now saw opportunity and adventures to be had. Thank you, Michael Neill. And that's just one of them. Martin, who's managing director of Sainsbury Argus Financial Services, said, I'd read Michael's books and intuitively got my experience of the world is through my thinking. But after spending a bit of time with him, I really started to understand it, and now I spend far more time out of my head and in my life. I trust myself more. My problem-solving ability has improved. I'm present, grounded, and more alert. I've always loved life, but Michael helped me discover an even richer world beyond my thought, and I'm so grateful for that. Pierce says, I love every minute of learning from Michael. I would recommend to any coach, whether at the beginning of their journey or way down it, that this experience will significantly shift your philosophy, attitude, and behavior for you as a coach. Such a refreshing and revitalizing way to look at how to coach someone. And oh yes, of course, your own life. The only slight problem is that you realize it is difficult to reconcile with what you were doing beforehand as a coach. And you now want to talk about coaching very differently, which is a very liberating place to be. This is what Nicola from the Simplicity Project had to say. The understanding he shares changed my life and continues to do so. My experience of being in business has transformed to one of being in flow and tapping into creative solutions whenever I need to. I spend more time with my family and have a far closer connection with them than ever before. My migraines and anxiety have all but disappeared. When I finally saw the space within that Michael so eloquently points to, I did finally crack the bottle of champagne. I found something better than $1 million, and for that, Michael, I will always be grateful to you. Now, these are just some examples of executives, coaches that have worked with Michael and have had tremendous impact in their lives as they went through the experience of Michael actually using the methodology that you're going to experience today on this class. There's an attached workbook that you can download, and if you're somebody who likes to take notes and likes to take information and makes information present to them as they fill in the workbook, go ahead and use the workbook and write that information. Now, here's something I would like you to do. Over the course of the next 40-50 minutes, you will be experiencing one of the most powerful exercises that you could experience as a coach. You'll be learning about a methodology that will be phenomenally useful to you as you go out and coach people. Irrespective if you're a new coach, you're a seasoned coach, if you're working with people that seemingly are further in the journey from you, or you're working with people that you've never worked before with, or with people from industries you've never communicated with, it does not matter. What matters is that you're working with human beings. And because this methodology is so powerful, I invite you to make your surroundings distraction-free or as distraction-free as possible. Focus on what we are communicating, because this one conversation could be that turning point where you shift as a human being, you shift as a coach, and you then can shift that reality for your clients. Also note, what you're about to experience will get you started. If you want to go deeper into understanding the 3 principles, on implementation of 3 principles, on seeing examples of actually being coached around 3 principles, later in the class I'll make an invitation for you to join Impacting Leaders. But for now, let me invite my guest over. Hi, Michael.
Hello.
How are you doing, man?
I am well.
I am so excited to have you today on the set.
Cool. Let's do this.
Let's do this. So, Michael, like you, there might be a lot of people that are watching this class and they've just gotten introduced to you. They've just got an idea of who you are, but they may not know the full story of the making of Michael Neill. So, would you be kind enough to tell a little bit about how did you get into this? Why do you do what you do? And how did this journey start?
I would love there to be a selfless version of the story where I started rescuing kittens as a child and it just progressed to life coaching. But I was just a depressed, suicidal kid, and I was looking for anything that could help me. And along the way, I tried anything. I mean, I tried things that are specifically not healthy or legal, but I did also try to read a lot. I read a lot of philosophy, I read a lot of spiritual books, I read self-help books, anything that I thought might help me not kill myself, basically. And occasionally, if I was feeling really up, I'd upgrade my goal from not killing myself to not being completely miserable all of the time. And somewhere along the way, it dawned on me that I'd learned a lot that probably would help other people, because a lot of my friends and people that I met would ask me about things, and I knew a lot by then, because I'd been through a lot. And so I kind of just started sharing with people the best of what I had learned. And over time, I realized, oh, that genuinely helps people. And I used to do what I called coffee cup coaching. So I would meet people for coffee, and if they bought the coffee, I'd listen to them and talk to them for as long as they'd want. And my wife would go, shouldn't you be charging for this? And I'm like, I don't know. It didn't feel like a real job. It just felt like something that was worth doing. And then one day it just made sense to charge. And so I started charging people and didn't put them off. Like, they kept coming. And by then, of course, I'd done it a lot, so I was already pretty good at it. I was pretty experienced. And I became very successful. I became successful as a teacher. My background at that point was neuro-linguistic programming, NLP, and I worked with Dr. Richard Bandler, who was one of the creators of NLP, and we would do these huge trainings in London, these week-long trainings with like 700 people in the audience, and it was all very exciting, and it was all very good, and I became what I thought of as a high-functioning depressive. So I didn't really, I still had my tendencies, but I'd learned to overcome them. I taught something that was actually in one of my books called Behavioral Prozac, which were a set of practices that I did on a daily basis to make sure that I didn't sink back into my depressive ways. And then I came across a book. My wife and I were having what I like to call our annual fight. So once a year, whether we need it or not, we're over 30 years in now, but we have an argument about something. And a friend of mine gave me a book to read, and it was on relationships, and I was like, I hate relationship books. But okay, I'll read the book. And I actually thought it was kind of cool. And it was by a man named Dr. George Pransky, and it was like, okay, this is different. And I didn't think anything more of it till my friend who gave me the book said, how's it going with Nina, my wife? And I said, great. And he said, well, how about the fight? And I said, what fight? And he said, you guys were in your annual fight. And I was like, no, we weren't. And I literally had gotten amnesia from something I'd learned in that book for my biggest problem. And I'm like, okay, I need to learn about this. And so I reached out, and this was before the internet was quite such a big deal. So we had these things called phone books, kids, where you had to look up numbers. And I tracked down George, who wrote the book, and he was teaching in this very small town up in northern Washington, and I went up to learn what it was that they did, despite the fact that he said, well, we don't really teach anything. Like, we don't teach techniques. We don't teach anything that you can do. I'm like, okay, I haven't paid you enough money yet. That's fine. I'll do the advanced course where you share the techniques. But he seemed sincere. Like, at no point did I think he was conning me. I just thought he was kind of sweetly naive. And I went up there, and for 2 days, I listened to them talk about these things called the 3 principles. And I was like, okay, and I was bored. In all honesty, I was bored out of my skull. I was bored to the point where I would like call my wife in the breaks, and she would like, are you okay, honey? It's like, yeah, just everyone up here talks really slow. And finally, the second night I was up there, he'd asked me to watch this video of a teacher, an enlightened Scottish mystic named Sid Banks. And so I was like, fine. I had dinner in the hotel room. I had a couple of beers. I was waiting to get through the video because there was a baseball game on. And I'm on the second beer, and I hear the guy in the video say, every human being is sitting in the middle of mental health. They just don't know it. And I don't know why, but I got it. Like, I knew it was true. I did a spit take, like beer came out of my nose, and I laughed for about 10 minutes in relief, because I had spent most of my adult life trying to overcome something that I suddenly went, oh, that's not even real. And it really messed up my career because I was very successful helping people overcome their brokenness and succeed in spite of their brokenness and use their brokenness as strength. And I didn't know what to do with myself, because I really genuinely got not only that I was okay, but that I'd never met anyone who wasn't. And it was funny because I was about to go on a book tour promoting a book called Feel Happy Now, which was, it basically was about how to have a nice life even when you're broken. I just thought, I can't do this anymore. And I wound up going through a very kind of natural and surprisingly gentle transition from the kind of work I had been doing, which was very hard driving, very technique-based, very go get 'em tiger, to a much simpler kind of a conversation, what I call the transformative conversation with clients, where we talked about what's true. Not true for them, but true for human beings. Always has been true, always will be true. And those were those principles that they had talked to me about back in the day. And for the first time in my life, I was happy. When you understand something that is just fundamentally true, it affects everything. And that's the work I've been doing for more than a decade now, and that's my favorite thing in the world to do.
That's beautiful, and it kind of leans into the idea that, of course, a lot of us as coaches who are starting out, or even the ones who have had tremendous amount of experience, it kind of contradicts that, because a lot of times we have been told, oh, use these tools, here are the techniques, here's do this and then do this, like the thing that you were saying, fixing problems, and really approaching your clients as fixing the problem instead of saying this is how a human being is. So what would you say to somebody as we are listening into your story as to what is that, why is it that we are so attached to these tools and techniques, and what happens when you move from the place of sticking to the tools and techniques and these quick hacks, if I may, to saying, hey, here's a fundamental understanding of human beings, and here is how it works, and what's the power that comes with it, and why do you think the tools and techniques may be useful at times or not useful at all?
Well, I think it's a combination of an innocent misunderstanding and a lot of insecurity. So for me, and I was nicknamed the king of technique, so within my field, if anybody needed a technique, I either knew one or would create one for them. So I definitely lived in that world for most of my career, 17 years of my career. But one day I did an experiment, and I took on 3 clients who I normally wouldn't have taken, because they were really slightly more probably therapeutic than coaching clients. But I get emails, because I'm well known, from people saying, hey, you know, I used to call them my Obi-Wan Kenobi emails. Help us, Obi-Wan Kenobi, you're our only hope. And I have a network of great people, so I would always refer them to somebody that could help them. But I wanted to see, how robust is this? Like, will this really help anyone? Because if it's true about all people, then it should help anyone. And so I picked out 3 people who I normally would never have worked with, and I sent them these comical disclaimers that basically said, by signing this, I agree that I am an idiot. I should never work with Michael Neill or anyone who knows him. He doesn't know what he's doing, and anything that happens is totally my fault. Because I didn't know, right? Like I was just trying to be honest with them as much as anything. And I just decided I was going to have one chat with each of them. I was going to sit down with each one of them for a couple of hours and see what happened. First person that came was somebody who'd been on what they call psychological disability and had not worked for 7 years. And when they came to me, they were beginning to feel a little bit hopeful, which is what caused them to reach out, but they were in a real double bind, because the insurance company basically said, well, if you go back to work, then clearly you weren't really sick, so you have to pay us back the last 7 years worth of money that we paid you. So not only was she not sure she was okay, she was kind of being threatened that if you say you're okay, you won't be okay. And I was like, wow, that sounds really terrible. So I didn't even know how I would do. But we just talked about principles. We talked about how experience is created and where fear comes from and what would cause people to behave in the way they were behaving and why she had felt unable to work and what was changing that caused her to feel actually more than capable of working. And I thought it was a really nice conversation. We got into a lovely feeling together. We really connected. There was a lot of laughs. There were some tears. But I wasn't really sure anything had changed. And I had booked a 1-month follow-up with everyone. And so after the month, she came back and she said, I'm back. I've sorted things out with the insurance company. I've got a job at a really kind of her dream job at a company. And in my head, I'm like, really? Because it's like, even though it helped me, I wasn't really that sure it would help everyone else the way it helped me. I thought I might be kind of a special test case. The next person was somebody who had been suicidal. And I didn't realize how serious it was, because it was the emails back and forth had been quite light, and it wasn't somebody I knew. But his wife answered the phone and said, "Oh, is it Michael? Good, because he keeps saying he's going to kill himself tonight, and I can't deal with this anymore. I'll go get him." Like, oh crap! Like I really didn't think it was serious, and I thought it went through all the insecure thoughts that you have of, I'm not qualified. I should call a medical doctor. But something in me knew it was okay. I don't know how else to say it. I just kind of got, this is okay. And I talked to him and had the same conversation. We just talked about where those feelings come from, what it's like. He and I kind of compared notes about some of the things that I used to think when I was going through that. And I felt like I didn't really help him because he kept saying, okay, so what I need to do is when this happens, I need to do that. When that happens, I need to do this. So he'd kind of turned everything that I'd said into a strategy. And in my old work, that would have been great. But what I've learned in working the way that I work now is when somebody turns something into a strategy, it's because they don't really get it. So it would be like if I showed you how to open a door, a sliding door, and you went, okay, so what I would do is I check to see if there are hinges. And if there are hinges on the inside, I pull the door. And if the hinges on the outside, it would just let you know they didn't really understand how doors worked. So I kind of knew he didn't really understand what I said. But I said, look, and this was just a hunch in the moment. I said, can I talk to your wife? Because she sounded more upset than he did. And I talked to her, and we had basically the same conversation. And she was saying when we started, oh, I'm leaving him, I can't take this, I'm taking the kids, we're going away. And then all of a sudden she had this thing that I love. It's my favorite moments in a coaching session where she got real quiet and kind of did one of those. And when she looked up, there was a light in her eyes. And it was just, I don't want to leave him. I love him. I'm just so frustrated, I don't know what to do with myself. And we had a completely different conversation from that point forward, and it was amazing. And I wound up getting a postcard from them a year later on holiday at Disney. That was their big dream that they had never been able to do because of what was going on with them. The third person had OCD, and it was to the point where they were fairly wealthy, and they had ripped out and replaced their kitchen constantly for 3 years. So they spent hundreds of thousands ripping out kitchens and redoing kitchens because nothing was quite right and everything had to be new, and had been in therapy for years and years. And she was the only one where there was this opening to do a technique, and I couldn't help myself. Like, I'd been doing techniques for 17 years, and I just thought, oh, it won't hurt to just stick one little technique in there. In and amongst the conversation about the nature of the human experience and who we really are at core and where our experiences and moods and feelings come from, I just slipped that one little technique in. And she called less than a month. She didn't wait a month before we got back together to tell me that one little 2-hour session did more for me than all the years that I've spent, all the money I've spent on therapy, and I want to thank you so much. And that technique was so amazing. Do you have more techniques for me? And I realized for the first time that the problem with techniques isn't that they don't work. The problem with techniques is people think that it's because of the technique that they were able to do what they did. So instead of recognizing that there is an extraordinary capacity inside us that allows us to do amazing things, get insights, be innovative, they think the technique is what did it. And the analogy that I came up with for it is if you're teaching a kid to swim, one of the best ways to teach them to swim is drop them in a pool while you're there safely, but drop them in a pool and they'll splash about, and then at some point they'll begin to realize, oh, we're made to float. Like, it's natural to float and swim and play inside a pool. But if you give them anything to grab onto, they'll grab onto it. And they'll think it's whatever it is that they grabbed onto that made it okay. And that was really the beginning of the end for me using techniques, not because it's bad or wrong and you shouldn't or anything like that, but just because we're creatures who attribute meaning to things. We're always looking for, why did that work so I can make sure it keeps working, or why didn't that work so I can make sure it doesn't work? And whatever we attribute our results to is what we want more of. And so if I attribute my success to a technique, when I stop succeeding, I'm going to look for new and better techniques. If I attribute my success to a coach, when it's not working so well, I'm going to go back to that coach. But if I can see that the reason that I'm doing really well is because I understand what I have going for me on the inside. I understand what I'm up against on the outside, and I know what to do even when I don't know what to do. Then I'm golden. I'm not scared by new situations. I'm not unduly daunted by something just because I haven't done it before. I have a confidence that is built into the system instead of that is born of years and years of practice. And for most people, and this is true for coaches as well as the clients that we work with, when you can find a confidence in the unknown, when you can be as or more confident in a situation you have never been in before, as you are in situations that you've been in hundreds of times before, that confidence will take care of you forever. That confidence will take care of you across the board, because most of life is going to be made up of situations that you haven't been in before.
That's amazing. And the question that comes to me or is present to me right now as we talk about we're kind of leaning into the understanding of what are three principles, and that would be my follow-up question. But before that, I'm wondering, as a coach, is there a point in my career where I should consider techniques and where I should consider three principles-based coaching? Or is it probably better if we just started with three principles-based coaching?
Well, in the last decade plus, I've trained hundreds of coaches, like face-to-face, thousands online. And they've ranged. They've ranged from people who have never coached before to people who have 20 plus years experience. As a rule, the coaches who come to this clean get it quicker. They do it better. There's less of an unlearning curve. You've heard of learning curves? Well, there's an unlearning curve. Now, I was on a really slow unlearning curve. I had done every training. I had 9 certifications by the time I came across the principles. So it took me a while to really trust that it could be that simple. Because I kept thinking, well, this is good, but let me add in some of my golden oldies, some of my greatest hits from other things I did. And eventually, it just became really clear that the cleaner you can come to this, whether it's clean because you've done a lot but you're willing to put it to one side, or it's clean because you have no idea what you're doing, the faster you get it. Because it is common sense. This is not something that comes with practice. This is something that comes with insight. And insight can happen for any of us at any time. There are no prerequisites. I always think that it's unfortunate that my field has sort of gotten called the three principles, because the obvious question is, well, what are the three principles? And even when I first came to it, I was, cub reporter, notebook in hand, ready to write down the three principles, because I thought a principle was a statement, like as above, so below. But a principle in the sense that I'm talking about is something that is fundamentally true. So a principle is the most fundamental, irreducible element of a thing. So the principle of gravity it's just true. It doesn't become more true if you believe in it, or less true if you don't believe in it. It would be a very weird world if it did. It doesn't become more true once you hear about it than it was before you heard about it. It's how something has always worked. It is not more true for people in the Western Hemisphere than the Eastern Hemisphere. It is not more true above the equator than below the equator. It's just how it works. So when I talk about a principle, I'm talking about something that is 100% true, always has been, always will be, for everyone, no matter what. And when it comes to human beings, there are 3 things that are simply true about the human experience. And one, and this sounds, I know, because I've had this conversation with people for over a dozen years now, is we are alive. And in the language of the principles, we tend to call that the principle of mind. That there is a universal mind, a universal life force that animates us. So I don't know if you've ever been around someone who's died, but one of the things that's extraordinary, or certainly was my experience, many people I've talked to about it, is you can tell whether they're alive or dead. You can tell. I remember when my dad died, realizing, oh God, he's not there anymore, even though his body was still right there. That animating force, that is the principle of mind. And it has an intelligence So there's an intelligence behind the form. So we think of intelligence as being a property of the brain, but I would call that the intellect. And people's intellects do vary, depending on genetics and depending on upbringing and training and schooling. But intelligence is universal. It is innate. It's built into the system. It's part of the factory settings for human beings. And when people learn that they can draw on and be guided by and rely on that real-time, responsive, innate intelligence, it fundamentally changes the way they approach things. And when we recognize that everybody we work with has that in them, we don't treat them according to what they've done to now, what they've done to date. We treat them according to what we know becomes possible for them. A second principle, and the one that most people think they understand, is the principle of thought. And to put it really simply, people think. And we might go, oh, well, yeah, no kidding. Of course people think. But we don't understand that we live inside a world of thought. So people often, there's all sorts of techniques to do with positive thinking or reframing where you try and get better thinking about something. So I need a better way of thinking about money. I need a better way of thinking about business. I need a better way of thinking about this person. But we don't see that money, business, and the person are made of thought in our own minds. We're not really thinking about the person. We're thinking about the person that we've made up out of thought in our own head. We're not really thinking about money. We're thinking about whatever it is we've made up money to be. We're not really thinking about business. We're thinking about whatever we've thought business up to be. What really changes is not when you get better thinking about something. It's when you see that the thing itself is made of thought. And then a third principle is consciousness. And the simple way of talking about consciousness is we are aware. We have a capacity inside us for awareness, for noticing, for insight, for experience. And I struggled with that one because it seemed very hard to get my head around. It seemed the most esoteric in some ways, the least tangible. And one of my mentors said, you're trying too hard to get the words right. She said, you know that feeling of life coming through you, that feeling of being connected to a larger whole that you have sometimes? And I was like, yeah, I know that feeling. She said, that's mind. And she said, you know how sometimes you can be just sitting in a chair in a coffee shop and you find yourself going back into something that happened in the past and getting really upset, or thinking about something in the future and getting either really excited or really anxious. And if we had a video camera on you, you haven't moved. Well, that's thought. That's the principle of thought in action. And she said, you know that sense where sometimes even when you close your eyes, you still know the world is there? You still know you're there? That's consciousness. And those simple principles, mind, thought, and consciousness, make up everything. There is no experience that any human being has ever had or ever can have that is not made up of that aliveness, that awareness, and that creative capacity of thought. And those are the principles. They're always there. They're neutral, right? They can create heaven and hell, right? It's like I sometimes use the analogy for thought of Play-Doh, right? Play-Doh is not evil, but you can make some pretty evil looking things out of it. And it's not good, but you can make some really cool looking things out of it. Consciousness is like a mirror, right? A mirror can reflect Hitler and work just as well as the one that reflects Mother Teresa. It's not what is reflected within it. It is a capacity before content, before whatever is inside it. And that aliveness, that intelligence will guide people in whatever they do. Wherever they look, that intelligence will guide them in how to thrive in that area. So the capacities, which is another way of saying principles, these three universal capacities are in all of us. But because we don't notice them, we get caught up in the forms they take, we don't value them. And because we don't value them, we never really learn how powerful they are. And once somebody starts to wake up to them and wake up to their power, it changes the game. I mentioned Sid Banks a little earlier, and one of the things that somebody was asking him about fate, and are things predestined, and or can we really make our own way in the world? And he said, well, the thing is, the cards have already been dealt, but everybody is sitting on a royal flush, and they just don't know it. We've got these incredible universal gifts inside us, but it's not our fault we're not using them. We actually are using them all the time, but we're using them so haphazardly and so randomly that life looks haphazard and life looks random. And there's just something very different that begins to happen as people wake up to the fact of thought, the fact of consciousness, the fact of this intelligence I'm calling mind. So here's another analogy. If you've ever been to the movies, and I'm going to assume that you have, so thought is the film strip. Thought is the film. It is the movie. It's the content of the movie. Mind is like the projector. It's the thing that allows the movie to play out. Well, you also need a screen, because if there's no screen, you don't see the movie. It would just be light in space, and that's consciousness. So when mind, thought, and consciousness get together, you experience a movie. Have you ever been to a movie and forgotten you were in a movie and gotten so caught up and scared that it terrified you? When my son was little, they were showing previews at the movie theater for the Grinch movie with Jim Carrey. And my son would get so scared he would be inconsolable, and we'd have to take him out of the movie theater. Now, he didn't understand about movies, so to him, it was real. There really was this green monster that was going to steal Christmas. Well, when he got older, he watched the movie and he thought it was hysterical because he had woken up to how movies work. So now it was fun to be a little scared, and it was fun to be a little nervous, and it was fun to watch bad things happen, knowing that ultimately it was okay. It's the same for us. When we start to wake up to the movie-like nature of our own experience, we stop having to control it and only have good experiences and never have bad ones, and only have good feelings and never have bad ones. We're actually free to experience all of it, to enjoy all of it. And because we're not having to spend all our time trying to control the universe to make ourselves feel better, we're much able to do much better with whatever the task at hand is. And that's gold for your clients, and it's kind of gold for us too.
That's fantastic and beautiful. Such beautiful metaphors also to really understand what and how it shows up in our lives. What would be interesting for me to listen into at this point is, how does that show up as we are working with the client or having a conversation with the client? Would there be an example or a story or some way that we could have a even deeper understanding of how the three principles actually show up for a coaching conversation?
I had a CEO sent to me by his wife, and he was, as she described it, totally burned out to the point where he was about to sell his company at a loss just to get out. And this was a company that he'd built up over 20 years, had about 50 employees. It was organic fertilizer or something like that. And I'm going to change a few of the details as we go. Let's just call him Frank. And Frank, I hadn't spoken to him at all before he came out. I'd spoken to his wife, but he'd agreed to come out and take a few days with me and just to see, because you know, there was so much money at stake that if I could even help him a little, it would be worth it. Well, he came out and he was pretty gray, like he looked like death, and he was fairly non-communicative. And I knew this was a successful guy, and I knew that this was a guy a very bright guy. I mean, he built this company up from nothing over many years. And So for the first sort of hour, I didn't talk to him about principles or anything else. We talked about movies. And just because he'd mentioned that he liked movies. So we just compared notes about movies, because I just wanted him to settle down a bit before we started talking. Most clients, when they come, are so preoccupied, they have so much thought going on, that they can't really hear anything new. So I just wanted to create enough space for the thought to settle so that he maybe could hear something new in our conversation. And when it felt to me like he was a lot more present and a lot more, his color had come back, I said, well, can I talk to you about this? Would you be open to a conversation about something that's universal? And he was like, well, what am I going to have to do? And I was like, oh, no, all you're going to have to do is be willing to look where I'm pointing. So that's it. That is your job. If you don't do that, I can't help you. Everything else is on me. And he found that reassuring, because he wasn't up for much. And I shared with him kind of what I just shared with you guys. And it comes out differently every time I talk about it, because I'm always trying to describe it fresh, because I trust this intelligence, this real-time responsive intelligence of mind, will bring it out in a form that is perfect for whoever I'm talking to in the moment. And so I'm talking to Frank, and we're talking about mind, and we're talking about it as a sort of, like I think with Frank, the way the analogy came out is it was like you're sitting by the bank of a river. And so there's fresh water in this river, and at any point you can just lean back and pull out the fresh water and refresh yourself and kind of come back to yourself. But you don't know that there's a river back there, so you keep looking to buy bottled water from people around you. And well, that brand of bottled water is supposed to be really refreshing, and that brand's supposed to be even better, and this is new and improved water, and this is, scientifically validated water, and the whole time, and any moment, that you're sitting by a stream of pure, beautiful water that was made for you. It is literally the water of life. It's like the most life-giving water that you could drink from. And when I talked with him about consciousness, I just talked about noticing. And one of the things that he had noticed in coming out to see me is that he'd forgotten his Xanax. So he was prone to all sorts of panic attacks and stress. And there was something about just the little bit of exchange by email that we'd had that he said, yeah, I noticed I was settled. And he said, I never forget my Xanax. And that noticing was consciousness in action. So his consciousness was beginning to pick up, oh, something's already different even before we've really started. And then we talked a lot about thought. We talked a lot about, and again, because he liked movies, we kind of ran with the movie analogy, and how the whole movie is made of thought. It's not just cartoons are made of thought, but live action, that's real. The whole thing is made up. The whole thing is a movie. And like a movie, it can get totally absorbing. It can absorb you to the point where you forget it's a movie. But in any moment, you can wake up from the movie. You can wake back up to the fact of a movie. And often, I think the example I used with them is when somebody's cell phone goes off in the middle of a movie. And it doesn't matter how caught up you've been in it, if their cell phone goes off, it brings everybody out. Well, I said to him, this conversation is going to be like somebody's cell phone going off in the movie of your life. And it's going to wake you back up to the fact that you are not suffering from your company, you're not suffering from your employees, you're not suffering from this company that's coming in and trying to rip you off and buy you out. You're not suffering from some deep psychological issue. You're suffering from unrecognized thought. You're suffering from being in a movie that you've forgotten is a movie. And that you've forgotten, like all movies, can change in an instant. It doesn't have permanence. It's of the moment, and it can change in any moment. And over the course of that conversation, and I've just kind of condensed a day and a half into a couple of minutes, by the end of it, he was so present. You know when somebody's really there with you? He was really there with me. And I started asking him some business questions, because we honestly had gone a day and a half without talking about his business more than 5 minutes. And he was so clear about things, and he had such great insights. And it reminded me that, of course, I sometimes think as a coach, I'm supposed to know how to do my client's job. Thankfully, we don't have to be good at their job, we just have to be good at our job, which is helping them be even better at their job. So I watched him turn back into the brilliant CEO who'd created this company from nothing and grown it into a national company that somebody was willing to pay millions of dollars to buy. He was so settled, he was so clear, that I began to get insecure about his wife, because I was thinking, oh my God, he's going to go home and she's going to freak, because he was like a different person in my office. And I said to him, do you think you could get your wife to come out tomorrow and we could talk to her together? And he was like, he thought that was a great idea. And so she did. She flew out, and the next day I had the both of them in my office, and I thought she would be really excited at how strong he was and how clear he was, and she was just angry. She'd obviously been living with this unbelievably stressed out guy for a long time, and that he could get better so quickly in her mind meant, well, it couldn't have been as serious as he made it out. And so she was really kind of aggressive. I was sort of backing up on the sofa going, oh dear, this is, but she was going, well, are you going to take Xanax on the flight home? And he was like, I don't know. At the moment, I don't feel like I would need to, but if I need to, I will. Well, are you still going to sell the company? Well, not at the price that they've offered me, but if they offer me above a certain price, I'd have to consider it. And we've been talking about wanting to do something different. And, well, how are you going to handle the employees? And he's like, well, I know these guys, and really, we're just a couple of good conversations away from making that all okay. And he just was so clear that after about an hour, she settled down. She realized it was real. It wasn't that he'd learned some new communication strategies he was trying out on her. He really was just in a different place. The whole thing was different for him. And it was kind of gorgeous. They were holding hands by the end, and they went out together. And I got a call about 6 weeks later that he had in fact sold the company, but instead of selling it at a loss, he'd sold it for a multi-million-dollar profit. And I said, what are you going to do next? And he said, I don't know. I'm going to just take some time and explore. And then he reached out to me like a year and a half later, and he sent me a newspaper article. And he'd bought up a restaurant and bar in the downtown district in his hometown. And it was about how he was not only launching this, but he had taken on the project of revitalizing the downtown area of where he lived. And I talked to him afterwards, and he said, yeah, he said, I was just ready for a new challenge, and this came my way, and I got really excited about it. And we keep in touch from time to time and share notes on movies. But that was, for me, just one of many, but a really lovely example of how quickly something can change when somebody really gets this at a deep level.
It's so beautiful, Michael, because the stories that you've expanded on through the course of this conversation until now, already you can see you could come from any field, any demographic, any type of challenge, and you could take these principles and really make it useful and help people really be able to come out of that situation and be in a better place for themselves in their own journey. So thank you so much for expanding on all these different stories. If you were to be able to give a reflection exercise or some kind of a thought exercise that everybody that's watching right now can somehow get at least a glimpse or somewhat of a idea in their own life or of the three principles, I think that will be an amazing exercise to practice here.
Well, there's an element to which, because we've been talking about it, I'm going to guess you have been noticing it, even though you might not know that's what you've been noticing. So my guess is there have been times as I've been speaking where you found yourself distracted. Well, that's thought. That's just the principle of thought, and it's so vivid that it took you away. So even though I was talking and ostensibly you were here to listen to me, you were caught up more, your own thought was more interesting to you than what was going on the outside. That's every client you will ever meet when they first come to you. Chances are that at some point you noticed that and you did something to bring your attention back to this conversation, back to me. That noticing is consciousness, and consciousness has our back. It will always wake us up to what's really going on and bring us back to the present moment. And I don't know whether you had the experience as I was talking, but if I ask you right now to tune into your body, you can probably feel some aliveness in it. Now, you might feel it as a buzz, you might feel it as a tingle, you might feel it just as energy moving, but that aliveness, that feeling of aliveness, that is mind in form. And I sometimes liken that feeling to what it would be like if a wire could become aware of the electricity running through it. Now, we don't think of it that way, but we are the wire for this electricity of mind. And when you start to notice the electricity running through it, it heightens the experience of it. And a lot of people describe, as they go deeper into this, and that feeling of resting in mind, of resting in this aliveness, as being their favorite thing about the whole thing, is they just are more alive. And especially if you're working with executives and leaders who are overwhelmed and burning out, that's missing for them. The only aliveness they have is stress. And that's a very different kind of aliveness than the authentic, genuine aliveness of life.
What you just saw was an introduction to the three principles. What you just saw was an invitation for you to understand how these three principles work and how they would translate to a client's life. Now, think about what happened in the past hour or so for your transformation and for the insights that you now have as you go on and work with your clients. What happens if we could take that experience and break it into smaller segments and give you real case studies and actually present examples of how exactly that's translating into a coaching session over a period of time? What would happen for you? How much more insight would that provide? How much more clarity would you have? How much more confidence you will have? How much more transformation you will experience? Wouldn't that be an amazing experience? Wouldn't that be a powerful experience? Wouldn't that be something that you can lean into every time you're going into a coaching conversation, every time you're about to work with a client? At this point, you have two ways to go forward. One is take all the insight and information that you got from this training, which I'm sure you love and you've been able to get a lot, and take it to your practice right away. It's something that you can, right? All the power is within you. Or you can actually advance your learning process. You can actually go deeper into this conversation and really understand how does that show up for a client. Really understand what are the nuances that you want to be careful of, or what are the specific situations that you may experience when you're working with leaders, when you're working with people more successful than you, when you're working with executives and CEOs and founders. What is it that happens? How do the three principles show up in different situations? How do you coach in those different situations? How do you get better at it at different situations? If you are somebody who is curious to say, I'd like to go deeper. If you're somebody who is asking yourself the question on how can I be a better coach? If you're somebody who is curious to see how the three principles can be utilized in their next coaching session and sessions from here on. If you're somebody who's curious to learn more about how you can really impact leaders, well, I have an invitation for you. You see, today we are inviting you to join a very special program that we've created with Michael. Over 1,000 students have already taken this program with us and have been raving about it all over the internet, about how wonderful this program has been for their lives and the impact they could have with their clients. So I want to make a special invitation to you. On this page, and only on this page, you will find a very special link that will enroll you into Impacting Leaders Quest at a very special discount. You see, we took Michael and we got him to really distill all the insights that one may need to be able to take these three principles and bring it to life. Bring them to life for the world to be able to experience through your coaching. For that, we got him to sit down and create modules which were less than 20 minutes per day that will allow you to fully experience impacting leaders, which will allow you to be able to work with executives and leaders and people that you may not even know, people that you may not even feel like you're qualified to work with. Because remember, 3 principles are based on us being human beings, which means you could utilize this program, you could utilize this philosophy and implement it across your coaching vertical, across any of the clients that you work with, and that is something that is available to you at a very special discount if you would check out the link below on this page. Now, I really want to invite you to not close this page, because the link that you see is only available on this page. Now, what is it that you end up investing if, let's say, you decided this was not the program for you, right? What would happen? You would most likely go ahead and take some other programs. You might have already invested thousands and thousands of dollars in getting a certification, right? A certification usually is anywhere between $10,000 to $30,000, right? So you may have already invested that kind of money, and you may be disappointed already with the results that you got from that certification. Or maybe you're thinking about investing in some of the other programs or other investment opportunities in certifications and so forth. This program is not $10,000, it's not $5,000, it's not $1,000 even, it's just a few $100s. And the reason why we're able to do that, and the reason why we intend to do that for that matter, is because we at EverCoach truly believe that in the future, we need more and more qualified coaches in the world. We need more and more people who are capable of causing a transformation because of the way the world is developing. You see, we have more and more workplace issues that are showing up. We have a new generation that is coming up that is conflicting with the old generation because their value systems are different. And because of that, we truly believe that if we could create coaches who are capable of causing a transformation, we have an opportunity of bridging this gap. We have an opportunity of creating a world that is even a better place than what it is today. We have an opportunity of really creating true impact in the world. And to make that happen, we want to make coaching or learning how to be a coach very affordable, which is why you will see that Impacting Leaders is available for even a further discount on this particular page. So usually this program would cost a few $100s. Right now, you're experiencing an even further discount just because you've invested already over an hour watching this class, and we want to reward you by an additional discount that is available only and only on this page. Now, I want to read some of the case studies of people that have taken the Impacting Leaders program and what it has done for them. So, for example, Ilko from Netherlands says this: I had so many insights during this course that I don't know where to start. I applied this new way of coaching with a couple of new clients, and they were amazed by the insights they had. This way of coaching takes so much weight off my shoulders. That said, it takes a lot of practice to integrate this in my DNA. I can highly recommend this course to anyone, especially if you find yourself in your head too much during coaching. Polly, who's a life and business coach, said this: this was one of the most awesome courses I've ever taken. I've done a lot of work on myself, and this slammed it all home. It made perfect sense. My energy shifted and dropped in the most calm and grounding way. I've come home, reset to factory settings. It's awesome. Going through it, I felt sick for a few days. It's exactly like Michael said. It is like cheesecake, utterly delicious, but too much makes you want to throw up. But that's not because there was actually too much. That's 40 years of thinking and beliefs exponentially shifting. I needed time to settle, but this was a landmark moment for me. I can't unlearn this. I can't unsee this. I am changed forever by these 3 principles and Michael Neill's teachings. Thank you. Impacting Leaders works for everybody. It works for if you're a young coach or new coach, or you're somebody who's been experiencing coaching for a very long time but feels like they're always in their head, or somebody who has been coaching for so many years that they almost have to shift the way they coach from their DNA level. Now, here is what is going to happen as you confirm that you're joining Impacting Leaders for the 4-week quest. You see, in the next 4 weeks, you're going to find yourself into a program where every single day you get a small micro learning module that allows you to create major shifts in your life. What you will find is that during the course of the program, irrespective of the stage of career that you're from or the amount of experience you've had coaching, you'll find useful tools, useful understandings, and shift in understanding and shift in perspective to really fully understand this methodology, on how you can take this methodology to first shift your reality and then take this methodology and shift reality of your clients. Let me tell you a little bit about what happens each week in this program. So first week, we focus on foundations of executive coaching, where we go deep into understanding principle-based coaching, which means you're going to learn how to really use the principles in executive coaching and understand the distinctions that you really need to know to be able to cause that effect in your client's life. You will learn how actually human beings work. What is it that gets us to do certain things as human beings, and what are some certain things to really evaluate, think about, question as we are trying to figure out what is causing a negative challenge for a person that we are coaching and working with. In the second week, we'll get into entering in the business arena. This is where we will learn about the 5 rules for coaching in business. We're going to learn about the game of business. We're going to learn the art of leadership. These are elements that are vital for you to really be able to start building a business around executive coaching, around leadership coaching, around working with clients that may seemingly look like they are more successful than you. In the third week, we'll be talking about leveling up the business, career, and impact. We'll be talking about decision making. We'll be talking about problem solving, creativity, and innovation. We'll be talking about performance and productivity. We're going to be diving deep in how to really help executives, CEOs, and leaders to be able to do these things a lot more effectively. We'll be doing that through examples and case studies, and we'll be taking you through actual coaching sessions so you can see how it really manifests itself when you are coaching somebody. And you're going to be watching Michael coach himself, which is, of course, a treat in itself, but also shows how somebody with 30 years experience of working with human beings can take all that insight or that simple methodology that you would have learned so well by that time of 3 principles and really bring it to their coaching practice. And the last week is a lot about finding success in all areas of life. You see, as we work with executives, leaders, and coaches, it's not only about getting them to be better in those certain areas of their career. It's also about giving them a more holistic life and a more holistic perspective. This is where we dive deep into life beyond the game that we all continue to play, managing pressure and stress, and you will also see transformative coaching in action. So over the course of 4 weeks, you will be able to experience 3 principles-based coaching across many domains, across many verticals. You will be able to take one step at a time and create that shift for yourself and for your clients as you go through this journey. In just 4 weeks, you will find yourself significantly elevated as a coach. And like we already know, once we elevate as a coach, once we elevate as a human being, our business tends to elevate. It's hard to really relate it to tactical stuff. It's more related to how our being is, how we have become as a person as we went through that particular experience, that particular training. And that will happen for you as you take the Impacting Leaders Quest. But here is something. I don't want you to make a decision now. What I want to tell you is if you right now make an investment in yourself to take the Impacting Leaders Quest, I'll give you a full 10 days, 100% money back guarantee. That simply means this. You go ahead and you make that investment in Impacting Leaders today, and if in 10 days you don't like anything about the program, anything about the quest, for example, the sound or the video or light or whatever that is that you don't enjoy about the program, you can go ahead and send an email to our email address called support@evercoach.com, where you will get a full refund of your money. Yes, anything you don't like about the program, you don't like the platform, you don't like anything in particular, no questions asked. All you have to do is send an email to support@evercoach.com within the first 10 days of you signing up for the quest, and you'll get 100% money back as you send that email. This is what makes quests, or this particular quest, so special. You see, most of the programs tend to be something that you can consume as you go. But sometimes, because we are taking these programs as we go, we tend to miss out on certain elements, or we lose motivation a particular day and don't complete the course. We at EverCoach at Mindvalley found that if we could get people to complete the programs, greater transformations happen. Not just learning, but real transformations, which is why we designed a program that actually has increased completion rates by 60% for everybody that takes a quest, which means when you confirm your participation in this quest, you're about 60% more likely that you will actually complete the program. You see, you might have found yourself in the past in signing up for the program, but never actually going to it. This hijacks that process. This actually supports your learning journey, not just gets you to buy another program and then put it on the shelf, but actually supports you in actually going through the program and actually taking the quest and getting that transformation for yourself. So we've designed this program to really help you navigate that whole process. And like I already mentioned, right now you have the ability to go ahead and sign up for this quest immediately at a really great discount, only available on this page. Now, right now on this page, you are seeing a very special discount of 70% off. Now, I want to give you a little extra to help you make this decision even more. So as you confirm your participation in the Impacting Leaders Quest, what you already are getting is a lifetime access to the 4-week quest. You're getting about 12 modules of jam-packed training and examples and stories and case studies. You're getting access to experiments to get into action as a part of the quest. You'll be getting a community of peers that you can interact with and share what's happening for you and happening with your clients as you go through this quest. You get a free mobile app, you get a free iPad app, you get a full 10-day money-back guarantee, you get an access to award-winning customer support, and it gets better. We add a bonus called Enrolling Leaders. You see, as you will learn how to impact leaders, as you will learn how to really be able to show up irrespective of where your clients are at in their journey and you are at in your journey, you may find yourself asking, how do I access these people? How do I actually reach out to these people? This is where Enrolling Leader is a great bonus to add on to your success. As you lean into the 3 principles and become the person that needs to be able to impact these people, we support you with a program called Enrolling Leaders that allows you to be able to access all these wonderful individuals that can then sign on with you to work with you to live a better life. Secondly, you get access to an exclusive talk that we did with Michael Neill called Coaching from the Inside Out. This was presented at EverCoach Summit in 2017, and the access to that talk is only available for people who attended that event. That talk alone will shift your reality on how to operate from inside out instead of having everybody else tell you how you should operate. Let me remind you that with this quest, you have a full 100% money-back guarantee, which means that when you take this program and you don't like something inside the program, you have an opportunity to refund every single dollar that you've invested in this program simply by sending an email to support@evercoach.com. On that note, let me invite you to join Impacting Leaders Quest. You see, right now on this page, and on this page only, you have an opportunity to sign up for this quest for a 70% discount. That's a bargain just for a few $100s. You could be elevating your coaching practice like never before. You could be working with one of the top coaches in the world with over 30 years experience. You could be learning one of the most advanced methodologies that is present out there in the world without having to memorize 2,000 different techniques, but by simply changing the way you're being and be able to show up in a way that you can change the being of your clients. If you're somebody that has been looking for that massive shift in your life, in your coaching ability, in the ability of you causing an impact for your clients or being the channel and the vessel of being that impact for your clients, I think you may want to give an opportunity to Impacting Leaders. This quest is designed to get you to the next level, to the level where you feel more confident, you feel more present, you feel that you can actually create and are able to create a shift in your client's life. We have been running the Impacting Leaders program for over about 2 years now, and we've had over 1,000 students take this program, and you already now know the amazing results that they've experienced. But some of you have sent us questions asking if Impacting Leaders is the right program for you, if you are at a particular stage and you are conflicted if you should make this investment now or later. So what I want to do is I want to ask these questions to Michael. Michael, some of the students or students who had just about to make that decision of saying, should I take this program or not, ask these questions. Like one of the common questions we get is, I'm curious to the idea of coaching. I have some life experience already, but I don't know if I am ready, if I am ready to be a coach, if I'm ready for this program, because I don't know if I'm ready to be a coach. I don't know that answer. What would be your thoughts to them?
Well, and I don't know how this one will land, but I did a survey. So I'd done a lot of corporate work over the years, and I decided one year I would go back to a lot of my old clients and see how the executives and people that I had coached were doing 3 years on, 5 years on. And the stat that I noticed most, that jumped out for me, was that about half of them had moved on from the company that they were in when they started. And at first I was kind of horrified, and I thought, oh gosh, I don't know if anyone's ever going to bring me back. But when I went and talked to the leaders and people that were behind in the company, in every case, there was a sense of, finally, they stopped trying to make themselves fit somewhere where they didn't fit, and they went where they were always kind of meant to be. And so one of the things that I know from just having done this work over a decade is that as people see these principles and they start to wake up to them in themselves, answers to questions like, should I really be a coach? Am I ready to be a coach? Do I want to be a coach? Do I want to be this kind of coach or that kind of coach? That stops feeling like such a important question to work out and just starts being kind of simple. And sometimes it's a simple yes, and sometimes it's a simple no, and sometimes it's a simple not for now. And so you can actually trust that in yourself, that as you get quieter, as you fall out of all that thinking and fall more into the intelligence that's right behind you, that's just waiting to be used, your own decisions become much simpler. And from that point forward, choices they stop feeling so hard, and they just feel kind of obvious. And you can really trust that obviousness and simplicity.
Thank you for saying that. Another question that we get is, I don't have any way to reach executives or leaders in different organizations. How will I be able to use, even if I took the Impacting Leaders program, to be able to take it to executives and leaders, or any leaders generally in life, not necessarily in companies?
Mm-hmm. Now, I don't understand really how this works. I've heard theories. There's sort of a law of attraction type theory. There's a universal resonance theory. I have found consistently that when, you probably heard the expression, when the teacher is ready, the student appears. When the coach is ready, the clients appear. That when you really start seeing things differently for yourself, when you really start seeing the simplicity underneath the apparent complexity of the human experience, people will find you. And I've had it where I've had an insight, and within 24 hours, before I've talked to anybody about it, before I've put out any new marketing material, before I've even written something that somebody could have picked up that I was onto something, people have reached out and found me. And in fact, some of the coolest and most interesting clients I've worked with over the years showed up when I was ready for them through no fault of my own. Now, it doesn't mean that you won't also learn things that will help you in going out and finding clients and going out and getting them. But I sometimes call this a piece of good news that sounds like bad news. Until you really have something to offer, you're going to find it hard to get clients. As you really have something of genuine value to offer clients, they're going to start finding you.
One of the questions that we get is, oh, I've read books about 3 principles. I know about the 3 principles. How's this different?
Well, there's 2 ways that I would say that my experience of doing Impacting Leaders and hearing back from students on Impacting Leaders is different from people who've read a book or read a few books. One is, if you've read a book about the principles and at some level you're not going, holy freaking mother of God, you haven't really got it. This is revolutionary. I called my first book The Inside Out Revolution because I realized this isn't another way of doing things. This is a fundamentally different understanding of life. The second is, even people who've really been personally impacted by the principles often think that they have to talk about them in the way their teacher talked about them. They have to talk about them the way Sid Banks talked about them. They have to talk about them in a very, now we are going to talk about the principles and blah, blah, blah. And they wonder, well, why would an executive sit there and listen to me talk about the principles? Well, the truth is they won't. What they will listen to you is if you have credibility in their eyes, and your credibility is not your resume, your credibility is your presence. But if you have credibility in their eyes, what they will listen to is things that will help them be more effective, things that will help them be less stressed, things that will help them work better with their colleagues and peers and subordinates and followers. Things that will allow them to not only be more inspired, but to innovate, to come up with truly fresh ideas and fresh ways of doing things. I have never met a leader or executive who isn't interested in all of that. And they don't really care how it comes about. So one of the stories I sometimes tell, one of my clients ran a multi-billion-dollar company and trained over 6,000 people in the principles in this company. And his boss was sort of challenged by the accountants about, well, how do you justify spending all this money on this training? And he said, oh, you mean the training that everyone who's gone through starts doing better at work and their division's bottom line start going up and up and up and up and is out earning the rest of the company by at least 300%? He said, I don't care if the coaches are taking them out into the woods to sing Kumbaya. They're worth every penny we're spending. So the truth is, your clients don't care how you get them there. They don't care what you know. They care how what they see, what they get from their time with you, will allow them to thrive in whatever it is that they do.
I have already 2 certifications. I've got this certification, that certification. How is impacting leaders going to add to or help me further?
Well, there's 2 ways that you can come to this if you already have a lot of experience as a coach. If you come to it looking for new tools that you can add to the toolbox, new arrows for your quiver, or whatever your metaphor for your coaching is, my sense is that initially you'll go, yeah, I've heard that before. Oh yeah, that's like this. Oh yeah, that's pretty good. And there will be 1 or 2 things that will surprise you. There will be 1 or 2 things that you go, huh? Like that kind of Scooby-Doo noise where you're just like, wait, that doesn't fit. If you are willing to follow those 2 things, whatever they are, you will find this program will open your coaching up to a level that you can't even imagine. Now, the other thing that can happen is if you get the limits of your current coaching, we're so kind of conditioned to go, I'm an amazing coach and I'm great. If your clients' lives aren't transforming and they're sending you new referrals in droves, you're not that great. You might be doing fine, right? You might be genuinely helping people, but there's a level of what's possible that you may not have even considered. So that would simply be my invitation. If you're willing to put down your certifications, and trust me, I had to put down 9 of them, right? If you're willing to put them down long enough to see for yourself what's here, I don't know anyone who isn't impacted. And then when you go to do your own coaching, you don't have to suddenly throw out everything you did and now I do this. But what you'll find is what you already do will come out a little bit different. It will have a different flavor to it. It will be a little bit more impactful than it was in the past. It will stop feeling by rote, like, oh yeah, I'm doing this again. And it will start feeling much fresher in the moment. And the ultimate goal of the program, as far as I'm concerned, if you've been doing coaching for a while, is that it helps you fall more deeply in love with the whole craft. It helps you fall more deeply in love with being a coach.
So with that, I invite you to scroll below and make a decision of investing in Impacting Leaders Quest.